Hey guys, it's Jennifer Warren, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my family's favorite meatball recipe. So here, what I like to do, pro tip, if you remember Rachel Ray, she would always grab all of her ingredients to get started. So here we go. Just 1 pound of meat. I typically, just to be heart healthy, like to use lean meat, but this one was on sale, so I always get really whatever on sale. Okay, so while I am chopping up these onions, which the recipe calls for 1/3 cup of chopped onions, and I like my onions to be diced super small just because when I bite into my meatball, I don't want to taste a huge chunk of onions. But anyhow, this recipe came from a dear elderly friend of ours. We were living in Ohio, a small town called Worcester, Ohio, and I was 8 years old, and my mom was pregnant with my sister, and she had just come home from the hospital having her, and this dear sweet man, Ralph Hill, we called him Uncle Ralph. He was like in his 80s, a retired pastor, a retired painter, and he made us dinner, and the dinner was these homemade meatballs, and I think it was homemade peach pie at the time. If not then, he always would serve us when we'd go to his house homemade peach pie for some odd reason. But anyhow, I always think of him every time I make these meatballs. Just so sweet to, as old as he was, to make that dinner for our family after my sister was born. And if you had children, you could probably attest to the fact that when you come home from the hospital, or even if you're having your at-birth homes, to have someone make a dinner for you is so wonderful. The last thing after losing sleep, this 80-year-old man made a homemade meal. So sweet. I'm not crying. You're crying. It's the onions. Okay, so once our onions are sliced, 1/3 cup of onions, 2 eggs, let's see, 1/2 cup of milk, 3/4 cup of Italian breadcrumbs. You could use plain, but honestly, Italian just gives it a little more flavor. 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese, not the kind that you have to grate, but just the powdered kind. And then, of course, we have our spices. So in here, I have 2 tablespoons of parsley. I like a lot of garlic. The recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon. I use a huge 1/2 teaspoon. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of basil, and 1/8 teaspoon of pepper. And now for the fun part, to mix it all together. I know some people probably are grossed out by this, but it's kind of therapeutic, I think. Okay, and if you don't have one of these bad boys, I don't know, because I use these for cookies, for the perfect scoop of cupcakes, and I am using them for my meatballs. It gives the perfect amount of meatballs in each scoop. And really, you can use any size meatballs you want to. I just happen to like this size, kind of a medium size. I also am placing these, you don't have to have one, but I use a stone, but you can use any type of cookie sheet. So I'm trying to get them all the same size. Once I have them all, I will roll them up in a ball. Okay, so next up, we're going to take them and we're just going to roll them in a ball. See? Okay, so now that they are all rounded, I'm going to brown them in a preheated oven at 350 degrees for about 15 minutes. Because these are slightly larger than originally the recipe called for, sometimes it takes about 20 minutes. Okay, so while those meatballs are browning, we can go ahead and we can start to get our sauce warmed up. So I'm kind of cheating here. I'm using canned sauce. I prefer Prego, but whatever sauce you prefer. It takes about 2 of the small cans or 1 of the large cans. I'm using an extra large can just because I like extra sauce, and it can definitely give me leftovers. So with my family, that's always a hit. Okay, so now that they are brown, we'll just stick them right into the hot. Give those a good stir so all the meatballs are covered with the spaghetti sauce. Got a tad extra spaghetti sauce in this pan. Hopefully it won't boil over. Cover and simmer for 45 minutes.